Hello everyone, my name is Tiffany Halloway, and today I will be talking to y'all about the history of the Looney Tunes. As you can maybe see, I am a big fan of Looney Tune characters. I love the cartoon, grew up watching the cartoon. I'm a really big fan of Tweety Bird, so my nickname actually happens to be Tweety. But I'm actually going to just talk to you more about the history today and some of the cartoons that came up from 1939 to now. Like I said, Looney Tunes started in the 1930s by Warner Brothers production. Warner Brothers had other cartoons that they produced, but the Looney Tunes happened to be one of the top cartoons that a lot of people actually enjoyed. The very first cartoon character that started out within the Looney Tunes happened to be a cartoon character by the name of Buddy. Now, Buddy was like a little kid human, so he interacted with the kids a lot because kids were able to actually understand what Buddy went through. But the only thing that most kids probably couldn't understand was the musical part. Cartoons around this time were all done by music. Looney Tunes with Buddy was all done by music. He may have taken a step, it was a music note. He might run, it's music notes. Anything he had to say, open his mouth, shock, or anything like that, it was music. There were no words. All communication was done through music. Another old school character that came into play around the same time as Buddy is Bosco. Bosco pretty much started the real portion of the Looney Tunes. Buddy eventually kind of died down and Bosco came up. He was more of an actual cartoon. So they used actual cartoon characters around this time, which Bosco interacted a lot with his character Honey. And Honey was like, I want to say like the girlfriend or just a friend that was a girl that was always with Bosco. She was also a main character around this time within black and white cartoons. Within this time, Tex Avery, Frizz Frangel, and Bob Clampett all came together as animators and decided that maybe it was time to pick up the step of cartooning. Some more black and white cartoon characters that they came up with was Goopy Gear. Goopy Gear was like pretty much a best friend of Honey and Bosco. He got into a lot of the music field within his cartoons, played the piano, the guitar, violin. A lot of his cartoons are him playing instruments generally. But he was always just a friend of Bosco and Honey. And then another character that Tex and them decided to add in was Beans the Cat. Beans the Cat actually got the name because he's a character that actually likes beans. And he's a cat, as you can see. But Beans the Cat was also another friend of Honey and Bosco that happened to be in just about every other episode that Bosco was in. Now, still around this time, the Looney Tunes characters were still building up. A lot of stuff was still black and white, but once black and white was kind of died down and color came into play, the characters Ham and X started to be really big. Ham and X are small little bulldogs, well, little puppy bulldogs that happen to always be pretty angry. They showed a different side of emotions for kids to be able to watch. Wasn't very violent. They never really just did anything too violent for kids not to be able to watch. Maybe fight or argue a little bit, but that was about it. Back then, violence was really big on what parents did not want their kids to watch. So the Looney Tunes kept that portion down, had to edit out a lot of things so it wouldn't be too violent, but kids would also understand the importance of not being violent with others. So around this time, as Colored was still interacting, the Looney Tunes became even more popular out on the outer skirts of things besides just cartoons. They started being mascots at an amusement park known as Grenade. Grenade was a pretty big amusement park, but then they eventually sold themselves to Six Flags, which now today there are Six Flags around where Looney Tunes characters are mascots everywhere now. Kids love the fact that Bugs Bunny, Porky the Pig, Tweety, Sylvester, Daffy Duck, and all these other characters were able to just walk around and just be there as real characters for the kids to actually play with. So, before they started coming up with all those other characters, Porky Pig happened to be the very, very, very start of the actual Looney Tunes to this day. Everyone believes Bugs Bunny is like the main character and everything, but in reality, Porky started it all. And with Porky, he had a friend by the name Petunia. And Petunia was also a pig. She played a little special part to Porky because they happened to be in love as cartoon characters, but it wasn't too much love for kids not to be able to watch. But Porky was still made within the olden days of the black and white, from the color to more color, to where his role was played a lot more than Bosco or Ham and X were. But along the side of Porky, there were other cartoon characters that had little portions into the Looney Tunes character roles. For example, you had Little Blabbermouse. Little Blabbermouse is exactly what his name is, Blabbermouse. He blabbers and blabbers and blabbers and talks really fast, and you never understand anything he says. He's a very cute little mouse, but he's just very talkative. Not everyone likes someone talkative, but with him being so cute and small, he's a very interesting character to actually watch. And another mouse that kids adored was Sniffles. Sniffles literally does exactly what his name is, sniffs. He sounds like he has allergy problems 24/7, and he literally just sniffs and sniffs and sniffs. Another character would be Bookworm. Bookworm literally is a worm that knows everything about books. You ask him to find you a book on maybe the tortoise and the hare, and he would be able to point you in that direction. He teaches kids mostly on all of his cartoons that it's a good thing to always be able to read. Like, know your letters, know your numbers. So most of his episodes were about letters and numbers. You might find like an A hidden in an apple tree, and your kids should be able to point out the fact that there's an A there, and A stands for apples. Another character that was made around this time would be Cecile the Turtle. Cecile played in pretty much only one episode of the Looney Tunes series, where she was the tortoise that raced the hare. Hopefully everyone is familiar with that story where the tortoise races the hare, and the hare plays all these tricks on the tortoise and tries to stop him from winning the race, and the tortoise feels that he's always number one, and the tortoise ends up winning. Another character would be Beaky Buzzard. Beaky Buzzard is more of just a nonchalant character that the Looney Tunes threw in. He shows no emotion. It's just more of, I don't care what you think. I'm going to give my opinion. Oh well. Whatever happens, happens. And then you have Claude the cat. Claude is the cat that literally shows the sad side of characters. Not really sad, but more of sad and scary. Like whenever he gets scared, he gets sad. As you can tell by the look on his face, he's very scared. Claude the cat happens to be scared of mice. All of his episodes are with the mice running around, and he's always scared of it. He's afraid of the dark. He is also afraid of noises that are unfamiliar to him, or people that are unfamiliar to him. Another pet would be Charlie the dog. Charlie the dog happens to be a very happy and hyper dog. He shows the emotions of there's nothing wrong with always smiling, always being happy. There's nothing wrong with looking at things on the positive end, should I say. And then you have Sam the sheepdog. Sam is literally what his name says, the sheepdog. He keeps the sheep safe within the farmer's farm. So he happens to have to chase off a coyote on all of his episodes, actually. And the coyote reminds you of Wile E. Coyote, but they're not the same characters. They happen to be two different characters. And he never talks, doesn't speak. You never see his eyes. His hair always covers his eyes. He's just a quiet sheepdog. And then one last character that was brought into the new color form would be Rocky. Rocky showed the violent side of the Looney Tunes. He was a mobster. Rocky showed how bad pretty much it is to smoke cigarettes, how bad it is to use guns, but none of his episodes was actually him killing someone. You never seen an episode where Rocky literally kills someone and they just die, or to where he shoots at someone and they have to literally run for their life or anything like that. He's just a cartoon character carrying around a weapon. But speaking of some of the old characters, you have Bugs Bunny, which next comes into play of main characters besides Porky, because Bugs Bunny happened to be kids' favorites. He has plenty of enemies, but is very nonchalant, very outgoing, plays a really big part in the Looney Tunes as a main character. He also plays in the movie Space Jam, if anyone else has ever seen that besides just me. And his very first enemy when he first started in the Looney Tunes was the Crusher. And the Crusher happened to be a professional wrestler on the Looney Tunes. But for some reason, the only character he ever wrestled was Bugs Bunny. And every time he wrestled Bugs Bunny, he would lose. Bugs Bunny never really just actually wrestled him. He just plays tricks, and the Crusher was never really ever to understand most of that. Another enemy kind of Bugs Bunny would be Tasmanian Devil. Now Taz is actually another main character within the cartoon, and he's just exactly what it says, a Tasmanian Devil. Does a lot of spinning in the dirt. Him and Bugs really don't get along with each other. Bugs plays tricks on him because Taz is a little slow. I mean, for kids you don't really say that, but his brain doesn't function as well as Bugs Bunny's does, should I say. And then you have Marvin the Martian. Marvin is more of the angry type. He always feels everything should go his way. He always feels he's always right. Him and Bugs always meet up, mostly in outer space. There's only been a couple episodes where Marvin actually comes to Earth and meets Bugs and runs into him. And pretty much each time they always get into it about something. Bugs actually has a few enemies. Like another one would be Yosemite Sam. For some reason, a lot of guys like Yosemite Sam, but I think it's because he's more country and down to earth and doesn't really care what others have to say about him. He literally is a true Western cowboy. All about his guns, and pretty much the only person, or well, cartoon character he's ever tried to shoot at is Bugs Bunny. And I don't know if anybody else has ever heard him speak, but he always talks about that rabbit. Like Elmer Fudd always speaks about that rabbit, which happens to be Bugs Bunny. Yosemite Sam and Elmer Fudd are similar in the way of wanting to kill Bugs Bunny, which you never would catch an episode of them two ever exceeding at that. But Elmer Fudd is the hunting version of a killer, I guess that you would say. He hunts during rabbit season. And during rabbit season, he really tries so hard to get Bugs Bunny, and it's so funny because he never does. Bugs always plays tricks on him. And as he's playing those tricks on him, he never realizes that he's never actually really shooting at a rabbit. He's really shooting at a duck, which happens to be Daffy Duck. And Daffy Duck is the main character. Him and Bugs are always in episodes together, but they really don't like each other too much. Bugs is always playing tricks on Daffy. Daffy always tries to catch up with Bugs to get Bugs back. And on the episode with Elmer Fudd that they play in, Daffy ends up looking like the bunny, and Elmer Fudd ends up shooting at him. His beak turns. He loses fur all the time. Bugs just happens to outdo a lot of them. But besides enemies, there were two that's kind of like a love-hate relationship. You have the Roadrunner. That is a main character. And he literally just runs. He's exactly what they call him, a roadrunner. He is a roadrunner. He runs, but he only runs away from one character that's always trying to eat him and catch him, which is Wile E. Coyote. And Wile E. Coyote is also a main character. He plays the coyote in just about every episode, some of the old episodes, but his nose is red in the old episodes. But now he has grown up, has a black nose, and every episode he is trying so hard to get the Roadrunner, but he never works. Like one of my favorite episodes happens to be when Wile E. Coyote tries to toss a big rock over a cliff, and as it's falling so slow, he's wondering why it never hit the Roadrunner nor the ground, and he runs down to the cliff to the bottom and ends up getting hit himself. But like I said, no one ever actually dies. It's just more of a cartoon. You know, if he gets hit with something, he like starts bouncing and he's still alive, and then it'll cut off the clip and go to the next. Okay. Now, like I said, besides enemies, there were still those that actually loved each other or were in love, like Pepe Le Pew. Pepe Le Pew is a French boy, well, French skunk, really, that's always about love. Love this, love that. I think of Pepe Le Pew, I think of Valentine's Day, because everything he does is about love. And they make him more of an ironic character because he's a skunk. And what person really just loves a skunk? I mean, yes, skunks are actually kind of cute to look at, but personally, you would never go up to a skunk and just hug it and be like, oh, I love this skunk, because they smell. And Pepe Le Pew happened to always be in love with a cat named Penelope. Now, Penelope might not look like a cat, but she is. Every episode, she happens to always run into some type of white paint or powder or dust or something, to where she has a white line, perfectly white line at that, from her head down to her tail. And it makes her look exactly like a skunk. So Pepe Le Pew always falls in love with Penelope. Penelope always tries to run from Pepe Le Pew, but Pepe Le Pew feels that she's just playing hard to get, which is love. Now more onto the family side of our Looney Tunes characters. You have Foghorn. And Foghorn was a character that's more of a father figure, a family man. Always wants to teach someone a lesson. If they do something wrong, he wants to correct them. If they need to do better, he will show them how to do better. And Foghorn is the rooster of the farm in the Looney Tunes. And as roosters are, they are protectors of their chicks and the chickens. And his main chicken was Miss Prissy. Miss Prissy laid a lot of eggs, but she aged, and she ended up running a lot of what Foghorn does and corrects him on stuff, because he has seen her raise plenty of kids already. And Miss Prissy pretty much will beat Foghorn to bruises if he doesn't do what he's supposed to do. An egg come missing, she blames Foghorn. An egg crack and is not warm, she blames Foghorn. And one egg that she did end up having is Egghead Jr. And Egghead Jr. actually gets his name from Egghead, which is another cartoon character that was built up within the golden ages, where color was just coming into play. And Egghead actually did not last too long, but they did take the concept of his name and turn this chicken into Egghead Jr. It's more concentrated on the shape of their heads. And Egghead Jr. happens to be a very smart little chickadee, but Foghorn tries to teach him the toughness of what he needs to learn about life out there in the real world. And Miss Prissy ends up having Egghead Jr., which is why she always blames Foghorn for any mistake that her chicks have. And now on to my favorite characters. You have Granny. Granny is exactly what she is. She's your grandmother. She's the loving, caring old lady that cares about pets, people, all types of things. And her very first pet that she gets is Sylvester. And as she raises Sylvester, she decides to get a bird named Tweety, which happens to be my very, very favorite character. And Granny raises Tweety also from a baby bird. And as Sylvester discovers that Granny has bought a bird into the home, Sylvester decides it's time to destroy Tweety. Sylvester always tries to eat Tweety. He tries to cook Tweety, but personally, Granny never allows that to happen. And even if Granny doesn't allow that to happen, Tweety always finds a way to prank Sylvester of thinking that he's really cooking Tweety Bird, but he might be cooking something like his tail or his own hand or something, or his own actual foot, and never realizes it till later. But as Sylvester eventually notices that he's never going to get a hold of Tweety Bird, he decides to grow up because he happens to have a Sylvester Jr. But Sylvester Jr. happens to be nothing like Sylvester. Sylvester Jr. does not like eating birds. He doesn't like eating mice. He doesn't like chasing mice. Dogs frighten the crap out of him. And Sylvester is not afraid of the dogs at all. But he will run from a dog, but he's not really too afraid of them. Sylvester Jr. is afraid of everything. He's very timid. And he actually becomes friends with Tweety Bird in a couple episodes where he gets mad at his dad for even trying to eat Tweety. But like I said, Granny, she keeps her family together, and they all happen to learn to like each other. And what's ironic about it is that they end up skipping backwards from the cartoon characters being grown to making episodes about Tweety, Lola Bunny, if you remember her from Space Jam, Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, Taz, and Sylvester as little kids. Well, little babies in diapers, pretty much. And what they do, they stay in a foster care with Granny, and Granny raises every single one of them. She teaches them life lessons. Kids are able to watch this and understand what kind of life lessons that they might face as little kids, or learn like alphabets throughout the story, and musical instruments, you know, some basic stuff that little kids like to learn. And it's a lot of the new generation Looney Tunes characters now are a lot bolder. The colors, you can tell the difference between the colors then and the colors now. So these colors are more just dull, very precise, just a purple skirt and gray hair on Granny, or Tweety's just yellow with some orange feet, or Sylvester's just black and white with the big red nose. But on the cartoon now, in our generation, the cartoon characters are actually very bold. They wear clothes. They have on different outfits each day. Their hair is different colors each day. They can wear lipstick, eyeshadow. You know, the generation is actually changing. It seems like they're trying to keep Looney Tunes within the actual generation of what the cartoons are following and what life is going through. So hopefully this was enough history on my favorite cartoon, the Looney Tunes characters. And does anyone have any, maybe some small history questions to ask about the characters or any of the black and white that I discussed earlier? Well, if not, my name is Tiffany. Remember that. And if you do have any more questions, just let me know.